Hey, welcome back into another episode of Mindset Monday with me, Matt, where I share with you things that have helped rebuild my life over the last nearly 13 years, stay sober, rebuild a marriage, become a better parent, and a better man. Today, I want to discuss emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence for many guys is a very foo-foo term. You're not exactly sure what this means. It's something maybe you've seen referenced, or maybe your wife or your girlfriend or fiance has thrown at you in the middle of a fight, something you've heard about and you think kind of lives up in the ether, but you're not exactly sure what it is. If it does exist, how do you develop it and why is it even beneficial? I know for me, I generally have to read into things enough to understand why they're important, why I should learn about this, why should I care about this? And that's what I hope to do for you today. Believe it or not, emotional intelligence is the thing that your relationship will hang on, as well as your career and your ability to be an effective parent as well. It's critical. It's mission critical, as we will get into some of the statistics around emotional intelligence and how crucial this really is to your success as a person. You would have to be a fool to ignore it. Before we get started, thanks to Soberlink, today's sponsor of our show. If you don't know what Soberlink is by now, it is the world's greatest accountability device that happens to look like a breathalyzer. If you're someone like me looking to rebuild your life, get sober, and stay that way, Soberlink can be the thing that's different this time, because we always say it's going to be different this time, right? But what if you had skin in the game? I'm challenging you to put skin in the game. You volunteer to get this thing. If you're serious as you say you are about wanting to give it a real shot this time, get a Soberlink. Soberlink can help you in a lot of ways. For one, it's a great way to establish accountability. You put people in a network that get notified every time you use the device. So you do have some guardrails around you, so you can't go off and sneak and keep these secrets to yourself and drink in your car or in the garage. People are going to get notified. And that's good for two reasons. One, it keeps you from drinking when you shouldn't. Two, you've got support and people who are rooting you on and cheering for you because you've given them visibility and transparency into what you're going through, which is a huge step, I think, for a lot of guys especially. Another thing this serves as is the greatest gift that you could ever give your loved ones. They don't want to search for bottles. They don't want to wonder. They don't want to worry. They don't want to check your location every 10 minutes. Wouldn't it be nice to give them the gift of peace? And that's what Soberlink can give people. If you're serious as you say you are, what do you have to hide? Give them the gift of peace and visibility. They don't want to have an argument when you come home late and ask if you've been drinking, but I hope you can understand why they would. So again, if you're serious this time, Soberlink can be the thing that removes these fights and these arguments from your relationship so you can really start to rebuild on the stuff that matters, like emotional intelligence, as we will get to shortly. But it's an amazing device, and it's never been easier to get into one. They've taken away all of the upfront costs. There are no more upfront costs. You can rent a device now. Just rent it for as little as $19 a month with a qualified subscription. Get a one-year plan, and for $19 a month, you can get a device and start to rebuild your life. You can use our link, soberlink.com/wheels, to get a $100 rebate on that as well, just because you're a listener of our show. Again, that's soberlink.com/wheels. Hey, and if you're a parent who's just trying to protect their children, Soberlink has and always will be there for you as well. Soberlink is court admissible in all 50 states and in Canada, and you can get these things written into your custody agreements. They stand by you as you are ensuring that your children are going somewhere safe, and they are court admissible, right? You can't fudge these things. You can't get around them. Tamper-proof, facial recognition technology, instant reporting. There's nothing like it in the world. So support the companies, support our show, get a Soberlink today. And while you're on the internet, check out twfo.com where you can find out all things TUFO. We've got a newsletter that comes out less frequently than it used to because I'm doing these episodes now, but that's free. It's on there. You can also go back and read a bunch of old ones. Tons and tons of newsletters and blogs that I've written over the last 3 years or so. We've got a free Facebook community exclusively for Facebook or for listeners of the podcast. It's only for podcast listeners, but it's free on Facebook. We've just started a new Discord channel as well, which you can find through the Facebook community. And it's got regional chats. So if you want to connect with other listeners, other people going through similar situations in your area, it's really awesome. We've seen people get together, have like meetups, they do coffee. They'll just get together and discuss because very few people can understand what it's like to be in your situation. But Wheelies get it, our listeners get it, and we want you guys to connect. Both these resources are totally free. If you want to get a little more serious about your healing journey, you can also learn more about our program, our course called Independently Strong. We built a course with a licensed therapist. Paige is the star of the show. She guides you through the process of healing and what it's like for a spouse and a partner. Talks about boundaries, trauma bonds, what it's like to rebuild a healthy self and self-care, making the decision, should I stay or should I go? It's amazing. It also comes with weekly meetings. You can get 75% off of that using the code Wheelies75 at checkout. Yeah, we've got merch and stickers and shirts and sweatshirts, hats, all kinds of stuff and ways that you can support the show. We've also got a link called, what is it? Buy Me a Coffee. It's in our link tree. You can click on any of our social media profiles. If you just like to buy us a cup of coffee, we'd really appreciate it. Every dollar that we've ever get goes right back into the show. As we found out this week with our theme music, we've received all kinds of copyright strikes and had to buy licenses. I did not realize there's a difference between public domain and royalty free, but apparently there is. And so I'm learning every day still as to what it takes to be a podcaster. But it seems like there's more subscriptions you can possibly count and expenses and things like that. And you don't have to give us anything and you won't hurt our feelings and we won't love you any less. But if you'd like to help the show out, you can do that. Multitude of ways that you can help out, chip in, and we can keep this thing going for you. We love doing it, but it's always great to have support as well. Okay, emotional intelligence. Let's get on to this conversation. Man, I was watching an interview earlier. This is really interesting. It was a really good interview. It was about the Sinclair method of recovery. Some of you may have heard of the Sinclair method. I know that we've talked about it on our show. I've talked about this, not really in depth. I don't personally have experience with it, but I've read a lot about it, and I've read the accounts of people that have used it, watched interviews and things like that. This was an episode of Modern Wisdom. I cannot remember the person that was being interviewed, but it was rather interesting. I don't disagree with the take on naltrexone and the Sinclair method and the brain science behind why that's effective for people. But something that was interesting is the person that had recovered using naltrexone really didn't like the process of 12 steps. And it wasn't just because of the spiritual component piece of it. A big part of it was that they admittedly said that they do not like being introspective. They do not want to observe their own emotions. They do not want to have to question their own emotions or where their thoughts are coming from or to be introspective at all. And I thought that that was a really strange thing to say out loud. I am not going to judge anyone that didn't recover the way that I recovered, but I do believe in the importance of emotional intelligence for relationships and for our overall success and happiness and well-being as well. Emotional intelligence is huge. I'm going to start off with a quote by Daniel Goleman. He said, if your emotional abilities aren't in hand, if you don't have self-awareness, if you can't manage your distressing emotions, if you don't have empathy and effective relationships, then no matter how smart you are not going very far. We spend years like stacking skills and chasing credentials and like climbing ladders in the corporate world. But if we ignore emotional intelligence, it's like building a skyscraper on sand. It's not solid footing. Eventually it is going to collapse. And I think that sobriety is much the same way. You can get physically as sober as anybody in various ways. But I think that any real recovery journey is going to include some exploration of the why of it all and emotional intelligence, especially as it pertains to our relationships. Remember, drinking is typically a symptom of something else. For some people, it's past trauma, it's genetics, right? It's wired in you. It's almost like there's nothing you could have done to prevent it. Although nurture nature has something to say about that, right? Nature loads the gun, but your environment pulls the trigger. It can also be the fact that it's really simple, that you really just like an altered state of mind. You really like that feeling and what that feeling provides. But what does that feeling actually provide? It's providing comfort, it's providing ease. As Gordon Keith said so amazingly, I love this, is that he feels like he was born 2 drinks away from happiness. He always felt like he was 2 drinks away from being complete and being happy. And I think that says a lot, not just about the state of us in the world and our inability to just feel comfortable and feel whole and feel ease. I think it says a lot about the emotions that are underneath that we ought to explore. I truly do believe that emotional intelligence is very in tune with high agency, which we've talked about a lot. And in order to be high agency, you also have to have emotional intelligence. I think I would argue to have any sort of a relationship that I would ever want to be part of, one that really matters, one where 2 people can grow together, you have to have emotional intelligence. You have to have the ability to look within and spot signs of yourself slipping before others do. I think that's crucial. It's absolutely critical. I know a lot of people struggle with this. And like I said, you can get sober, but what does that really mean? And not criticizing this it was a really good interview. And she wrote a book and I remember the name of it, I would tell you, go buy the book too. It sounded really interesting. But I thought she was very transparent, and it was a really good interview. But it was really interesting to me that there was someone saying like I don't want to dig into anything. I'm not trying to change the way I think. I'm not trying to question my motives. I'm not trying to question my beliefs. I'm not trying to develop. I'm just trying to get sober. And I think it's such a short-sighted way of looking at recovery in general, because if I was just going to quit drinking, if I just stopped drinking, I would not be married today. If I was married, even if I was married, I don't have a crystal ball, right? I wouldn't be happy. I know that Paige wouldn't be happy, because being in a relationship with an emotionally immature person it's oftentimes what people are upset about the most. And when spouses reach out to us, one of the things that they are really getting at underneath every bit of it is, I want this person that has empathy, that understands themselves, that understands me, that can anticipate my needs, that can anticipate their own needs, that has the wherewithal to look around in the world and see where they fit. That's emotional intelligence. And it's got different components, which we will go through, but that's really what people want. And if I would argue that if you could accomplish all those things, it wouldn't matter if you drank. Many, many, many times, spouses are attacking a substance, alcohol, drugs, whatever it may be. And what they're really asking for is emotional intelligence, but they think the vehicle to getting emotional intelligence is sobriety. That is absolutely false. There are plenty of people who can put down a substance and change nothing about their lives, and you can be every bit as miserable without the substance. That's why it's not just about the substance, it's about the behaviors. And I'd like to really get into that in emotional intelligence, and how we develop it. Where does it come from? Why is it important? How did I develop it? Because I didn't always have this, right? I was a very selfish person in a lot of ways. And I think that's a lot of what it is simply just being selfish. The lack of emotional intelligence, in my perspective, is just being rather selfish. You're not thinking about what other people need. You're not having these moments of sonder where you're listening to other people, or thinking about someone else in traffic and looking over and looking at their life and thinking it's every bit as complex as yours, and they've got their own desires and fears, every bit as valid as yours. Everyone in the world has their own individual experience, and we are not the main character. We are, even with the biggest relationships in your life, you're just a supporting cast member. They're the star of the show. And I think if you really want to get to understand people, and you really want to have meaningful relationships, that has to be at top of mind at any moment, right? And that's emotional intelligence. It's a skill you can develop. Some people are just born with more emotional intelligence than others, but you can also develop this. I'm sitting here fiddling with this rock, and I forgot to mention it. This is a recovery rock, by the way. It's got our logo on the front. On the back, it says, "Thank you for being my rock." Speaking of emotional intelligence, this is a really cool way to acknowledge the journey that your spouse has walked with you through recovery. Spouses don't get a lot of recognition. You know, maybe they work an Al-Anon program and they get coins, but those coins are from the people in their program, not necessarily from you. It's a really cool way to acknowledge from you. So we ship a lot of these things, which I think is really cool, just because it's what it tells me is that there's a lot of people who are really taking this message to heart, and that's awesome. So this concept is not necessarily new, but I think it's new in the realm of mental health developments, medicine, academia. We're talking about the 1990s. This is when this really came out. I think it was Goleman who wrote a book in 94, a book called Emotional Intelligence. But at its core, emotional intelligence is the ability to notice, understand, and manage emotions in yourself and in others. And Goleman broke it down into 5 areas. So let's go through the 5 components of emotional intelligence. And as we're going through these, ask yourself, do I have this? Do I lack this? Is this something that I need to develop? Is this something my loved one needs to develop? As you guys are working through therapy and everything else, this is important stuff to know. This is really crucial. First one is self-awareness. And what it means, it's recognizing your emotions as they happen and understanding their impact on your behavior. And here's some sneaky ways that it shows up. Let's say you come home irritable and after a stressful day, but you don't connect the dots. You're just stressed. And this is where I used to live, in this zone where I was just irritable. I was just really stressed. You tell everyone you're fine, but your tone and your body language and your energy sort of say otherwise. That was a big one for me. And I never really recognized the way that stress affected my mood. And then not knowing that, I was never able to come up with coping skills to lessen my stress, never doing any sort of breathing or meditation or prayer or exercise or any number of things that I've done over the last decade plus that have decreased my levels of stress. I get worked up easily. I know this about myself. That is self-awareness. That's self-awareness. I just recently had a big back procedure. They went in and they did at 3 different levels in my spine. They did an ablation. It's like they go in there and they burn the nerves or kill the nerves. I think they use radio frequency or something like that. But it's really, really painful. And the doctors were going to prescribe me what used to be my drug of choice, like an opioid. And I refused it because I know myself. I'm self-aware to know my patterns, right? That's a lot of what recovery is about, is recognizing your own patterns. I think that self-awareness is probably the most important of them all, because without self-awareness, none of this other stuff is really going to make sense. I think that it all starts there. That's kind of the foundation of where this all begins is, do you have self-awareness? And this is important for spouses and partners as well. It really is, y'all. As you've been in a relationship that's been tumultuous, as you've been in a relationship with trauma bonds, we've talked about the brain injury that occurs when you've been betrayed, betrayal trauma, and things like that. You are also going to develop some habits, some habituation, some ways of responding that aren't exactly productive. And same with the addiction. I'm not saying it's anybody's fault, but it is our responsibility. And having self-awareness around this is really crucial. Paige, for instance, right? She's my best friend. I don't want to sit here and bad talk Paige, but Paige struggles a lot with getting overstimulated. I know a lot of women struggle with this. I'm not sure it's unique to women, but I just hear about it more from women. They get overstimulated. And when they get overstimulated, they snap on people, especially their kids, or it can be their husband. It can be anything rather benign that happens. It can be setting down a dish too hard, and the noise itself is just too much in that moment as you've been juggling everything else in your life all at once, and then you snap, right? You flip out on people. And in that moment, you have a choice to make. Are you going to snap and justify the reason you snapped and actually blame the person that set this dish down perhaps a little too difficult? Or are you going to look within and say, holy shit, I got overstimulated, without recognizing it? I did nothing to take a moment away, to drink some water, to take a break, or whatever it might be. Use some of your coping skills. Take a 90-second break before you respond. Anything, breathing, you name it, right? If you're not aware that you're someone that gets overstimulated, and when you're overstimulated, you don't even recognize it, everything is always going to be everyone else's fault, and you're not going to have good relationships because of it. People, guys, are very, very bad about this too. Really bad about this. It's always someone else's fault, right? It's always her, or your boss, or the way that your work schedule's set up, whatever it might be. But I'm not saying that we have to be cruel to ourselves, but we have to be aware. We just have to be simply aware. I'm aware that I've got a temper. I always have. I've, like, when I was even a little bitty kid, I came into the world this way, like high strung. And I had a temper for a very long time, and things would set me off, and I have a really quick mouth, and I would run my mouth, and it got me in a lot of trouble. And like, there was a feeling associated with it every time I knew I was about to fly off the handle. And I've even admitted at times I gave myself permission to fly off the handle. I have the self-awareness now to know when this is coming up in me and to do something about it. Like, that's really what maturity is, right? It's developing the ability to respond rather than react. But all of that starts with self-awareness. And I think that's the most crucial part of emotional intelligence. Second, and very close to the most important, is going to be self-regulation. And this is choosing your response instead of it being hijacked by your emotions. Paige and I were talking about maturity the other day, and she asked me to define what maturity really is. This was essentially the rough definition that I came up with, was the ability to choose a response rather than react from emotions. And I think it's pretty good. I don't think it's the best definition. I don't think it's all encompassing, but I think it gets at a lot of what we're after here, right? The ability to self-regulate. And this can firing off a text in the heat of the moment, sending an angry email, road rage incidents for those of you that are shooting the finger behind the wheel or honking at people or following people home or flipping out. I've seen all of it, man. Road rage is crazy. This can be when you recognize, or when you don't recognize that you're overstimulated, or that you're stressed out, or that you're depressed, and you start doom scrolling as a way to make yourself feel better. Or if you storm out of conversations rather than engaging with the emotions that you're feeling, if you're feeling invalidated, or whatever it might be, and not having the ability to process through that emotion and act in spite of that emotion. It's a really difficult thing to do. Like, this is a life skill that everyone has to develop at some point. The ability to sit there, like Paige has always said, like, she's a terrible debater, and we'll be talking about something. I'll have a difference of opinion and we'll talk through it. And in recovery, I've become really good at regulating myself and being able to respond rather than react, and not get overwhelmed and overworked and have things become like nasty between us. And she's the opposite. When she gets worked up, she gets nasty and mean, man. It gets personal quickly. We're different in that way. You know, I got a head start on this stuff, and spouses do take longer to heal. They absolutely take longer to heal. You're working through a lot of other stuff, and a lot of times the path isn't exactly clear, but it's crucial to learn how to self-regulate. In recovery, this is, next to self-awareness, this is the biggest skill that you will have to develop if you want to ever stay sober. And that's the ability to self-regulate. So you have to be able to identify what the emotion is. And I had to ask myself questions because I didn't really know. When I was in treatment, they handed me a feelings wheel. Google feelings wheel. You've probably seen one before pop up. And I'm looking at this thing and I'm like, the hell? Like, I don't think I've ever really thought about like what anxious feels like, and like what the root emotion of anxiousness is, right? It's fear. Or if I was angry, like, what is anger? Like, where is it coming from? Why am I angry? Or some weird ones sometimes. Like, let's talk about envy, right? Let's say you come across someone that you went to college with, and they're driving a really fancy sports car, and they're living in, you know, the really nice neighborhood, and you're like, you want to hate them, but you're not really sure. And you feel also at the same time kind of less than, and you just feel sort of anxious, but you can't quite put your finger on it. I remember having this moment and I was like, holy shit, that's envy. Like, I'm feeling envious, like, wow. And then having a way to process through that and deal with that just by sometimes naming the emotion, but then acting in accordance with my values, not just the way I was feeling. Feelings are real to you, right? But feelings aren't necessarily facts with regard to the way that we ought to respond to the world. Most of the time, if not all of the time, you are going to get much more done in your life and have much better conversations with people if you can act from a place of reason rather than just purely emotion. Doesn't mean that there isn't a place for emotional conversations. Of course, there's a place for that. Of course there is, but it can't always just be one way. Next, we've got motivation. This is another piece of emotional intelligence. And this is kind of alluding, they all build on each other. This is letting your values, not your moods, drive your actions. Skipping the gym, bailing on commitments, quitting a project because you just don't feel like it, even though it matters to you, right? If it, like this podcast matters to us big time, but it doesn't mean we always want to sit down and do it. I have to act sometimes by my values and what's really important to me. Especially in recovery, there are moments where it's like, man, it would be really nice to have a drink or something right now. But what do your values say? What do your patterns say? Are you self-aware? This is how, like, cognitively we stay sober, and cognitively how we respond and have good relationships. I think that this shows up in a lot of ways. I think the most obvious is like showing up and staying consistent with like what you said you'd do, even when it's difficult. Like, let's say you've made a commitment to exercise or whatever it might be. The days that it matters the most are the days that you don't want to do it. Let's say that you're going to like AA or something, and it's like the meetings, the best ones are the ones that you flat out do not want to attend. And you have every excuse in the world as to why you don't want to F with it. You had a long day, you haven't slept well, whatever it might be. Those are the moments that we really have to get in there and do something. And there's brain science behind this too. The anterior mid-cingulate cortex is a part of the brain that's sort of responsible for willpower, and it's overcoming our emotions whenever we don't feel like doing something and doing it anyway. And you can actually build this part of your brain. The more that you do difficult things when you don't want to, it strengthens that sort of willpower piece of our minds. And it's not a golden ticket to everything, but it's certainly going to help you. And this is how we do it. This is how we do it. This is a lot of these things, what I'm talking about, it's adulting, right? At 30,000 feet, these are the attributes of adults. That's what they really are. And so if you've ever been criticized of being a crappy adult, hey, this one's for you. Next one is empathy. Something I struggled with, admittedly. This is seeing and feeling what someone else is going through. Empathy is a dual process where you use mirror neurons and also cognitive ways of understanding how someone has felt or could be feeling based on things that we've been through as well. Let's say that someone's dog has passed. In that moment, you can feel what they felt because you've probably been there before or through something similar. You've experienced loss before. And then sitting there with them in that moment, our minds have mirror neurons where we can actually feel what they're feeling in some way, right? People who are highly sensitive people, the work of Dr. Elaine Aron, like Paige is one of these, they say anyway, can actually feel emotions stronger than the person feeling them, which seems rather exhausting. But empathy is hugely important to understanding not just yourself, but other people around you. And it helps you respond in accordance with the way that you would want someone to respond to you in that situation as well. It's difficult, I think, especially in early recovery or in addiction, because I think that there's such a component of selfishness that exists when an addiction is present, and people aren't going to have a lot of empathy. And you can argue with me all day long that, no, I have empathy, no, I care. Maybe you do, but saying it and then exhibiting it are totally different things. Like cognitive empathy and then actual, like, actionable empathy are different things to me. I think that you can say that you feel badly for someone. That's sort of like sympathy. Empathy is feeling alongside with them. And yeah, you can't exactly ever feel how someone else is feeling, but you can put yourself in their shoes. And I think that empathy is, let's say that someone is like, how does this show up and cause problems? Let me think of one. Let's say that someone's really struggling with whatever it might be. It can just be a hard day, maybe the way that they were treated by you or someone else or their boss or whatever it might be. And it's like changing the subject whenever they're upset because you're uncomfortable, or dismissing their frustration because you're focused on being right. It shows up in a lot of ways like that, where we can invalidate the emotions of other people because to sit there with them in their pain is just uncomfortable. A lot of us weren't taught how to do this. I know especially a lot of guys aren't taught how to do this. We were taught how to do the opposite. As soon as you start to feel something that makes other people uncomfortable, your job is to squash it and to push it down. Okay, like that has a place in life, believe it or not. There is a time to suck it up and fight and move forward, even when you don't want to. We talked about that, like with motivation, that's part of emotional intelligence. But you have to be well-rounded in the sense that, like, dude, you're going to have children, right? And children do not know how to handle life. That is our job as parents, to steward them and to teach them and to show them how to manage their emotions. They don't know how. That's why they need us. And you have to have empathy in order to do that, to understand what they're going through, what they're having trouble processing, and to listen to them, right? Especially if you've got little boys in the home, it's really important. It's a lesson I think every guy wishes they could have learned in some way. I'm not trying to neuter the male population by any means, but I think it's really important that we understand emotions and where they come from and how to develop empathy, especially for your partner. I think that the journey of recovery taught me a lot about empathy, and it taught me a lot about what my wife was experiencing and what she was going through and what that must have been like being married to me. And being introspective in that way has really helped me develop as a person. And it's helped me show up better for other people in my life too. Like there's no downside here other than the fact that I had to feel some pretty uncomfortable things, but it was time well spent. It's pain that was necessary. And I think that the benefit of it far surpassed anything negative that I felt from it. I'll say that. Social skills, that's the last component here of emotional intelligence. And this is navigating relationships with honesty, clarity, and influence. This is what it doesn't look like. This is social skills are a tough one, man. I think it's so like, this is almost too general and too broad, because there are some people who have emotional intelligence, but they're terrible in social situations, right? I think some of this just comes from being around people in social settings, because you can talk over people, you can avoid hard conversations, you can fail to follow through, whatever it might be. Or you can do the opposite. You can have tough conversations with respect, resolve conflict without personal attacks. You can build trust through consistency. In those ways, you can develop social skills. Plays well with others, right? I think about this one a lot when I think about like the workplace and how a team at work functions, things that we have to get done. And I think that having highly emotionally intelligent people in the room is an unstoppable team. I think that when you've got one or two of them that don't play well with others, it causes more problems than you could ever imagine. Like it completely gums up the works. Completely. But all these things have to be developed in order to, I believe, have good relationships as you walk through recovery. Aristotle's got this really cool quote that I like. And he says that knowing yourself is the beginning to all wisdom. Knowing yourself is the beginning to all wisdom. I think that is so crucial. I think it starts with us. In order to know ourselves, we can then begin to sort of get an idea for how other people are experiencing life as well. And at that moment, something magical happens. You are no longer the center of the world. You're part of it. That's huge. That's absolutely huge. And that's what I think a lot of people miss out on when they're not exploring this kind of stuff in recovery or in general. They're completely missing out on this aspect that you are not the center of the world. It does not revolve around you. It is not all about you, right? Other people's bad days aren't about you. And sometimes you have to be there for them just as you would expect them to be there for you. And I think that that's what good relationships are made of, truly. But here's what research shows. So like I can sit here and tell you about why my opinion is and my experience with it, but you could be like, okay, well, really though, like what's the benefit? So Talent Smart found that emotional intelligence explains 58% of success in all types of jobs. I was reading a LinkedIn post here recently, and it was from an executive search firm, and they were talking about what they're looking for in new C-suite people, CEOs, CFOs, COOs, all these people, information officers, you name it, the C-suite people, they're looking for soft skills. No longer are they looking for the guy who is the best at creating pivot tables or the guy with the most knowledge on finance. They're looking for people who can manage people. That's the best guy that they've determined, or girl, I shouldn't just say guy. That's the best person to lead an organization is one that has soft skills, one that can lead people, one that has high EQ, not IQ. Anyone can develop IQ. EQ is something special. And every charismatic leader that you've ever come across has a high EQ. Anyone that reaches people with a message, anyone who can captivate an audience has EQ. What does that sound like, right? The leader of an organization, that's what you would want. So if you're someone who's disregarding this in your personal life, you're going to need it for your professional life too. It's really, really important that you develop this kind of stuff. Almost 60% of all your successes come from this. I think it was Harvard Business Review. Was it? It was a Harvard, I think it was a Harvard publication that said that this is where skills are trending when it comes to executives as well. Like your future success will be contingent not just on your ability to technically do your job, but to understand people. That is much more important. AI is taking jobs. AI can't necessarily connect with people. Think about that too as we kind of look into the future in the next 20 years. Here's an easy one. People with a high emotional intelligence earn on average $29,000 more per year than those with low EI. I think that's low. I think it would be even higher than that, to be honest with you, especially when you get to the upper tiers. This is huge. Like you are going to earn more. You know, they say it's about who you know. Who you know is just as much about who you actually know and who you might have gone to school with or who knows who, as it is, do they like you? And if you have a high EQ, you're more likely to be a likable person. So in relationships, meta-analysis across dozens of students shows that EI is strongly tied to satisfaction, resilience, and the ability to repair after conflict. And as stress researcher Hans Selye, I think that's how you say that, Hans Selye, reminded us it's not the stress itself that destroys us, it is how we react to it. And so can it be developed? Yes, I've already alluded to this. It can be developed. Your brain is an amazing thing. I think that there will be disorders in people that make this much more difficult. Neurodivergent people are going to have a harder time with this, I would imagine. Especially people like on the autism spectrum would probably have a harder time picking up on some of the cues when it comes to empathy and facial recognition and the social settings and things like that. But even then, it can be developed. I've got friends who have children that are autistic, and a lot of the time spent is developing sort of like this EQ toolbox, which I think is really fascinating, right? Because they have no trouble picking up on some of the technical stuff. Wicked intelligent, but when it comes to social skills, it's so important in the future of your marriage. That's what it's based on. It's that kind of stuff, right? She doesn't give a crap at the end of the day, really how much money you earn. Are you a good person? Can they raise children with you? Do they feel safe with you? These things are more important, period. You can talk to people who are in marriages where there's a lot of stuff, but they're absolutely miserable and they will still leave that situation. And you can talk to people with nothing who have everything they need in other ways and who's happier, right? I mean, obviously the best of both worlds would be to find someone that does both, but how often does that happen, right? But EI is not a fixed trait. It is a skill set. And thanks to neuroplasticity, something we've talked about a lot on the show, your brain can literally rewire itself with practice. One powerful tool is called affect labeling. And it's simply naming what you feel. I alluded to this earlier. This is a tool that I used in recovery without even realizing it. I would have to ask myself, what is that feeling? Where is that coming from? So say it out loud. I feel anxious. I feel disappointed. Neuroscience studies show that this reduces activity in the amygdala, the part of the brain that triggers the fight or flight. We talked about the amygdala before, and engages the prefrontal cortex, the part that helps you think clearly. And remember what we talked about when it came to motivation, when it came to self-awareness, it was truly defeating the emotion, pushing through with reason, and being able to respond rather than react. And that's where this comes from. And that's why mindfulness, and that's why journaling, and that's why reflection are so effective. They train the pause of it all, right? And they create that space that Viktor Frankl famously spoke of. He said, between stimulus and response, there's a space. And in that space is our power to choose our response. Oftentimes that's attributed to Frankl, but I haven't quite found where it's from. I don't know if it was just like something he said and someone wrote down, or if it's one of those things that I just turned into his quote. But either way, I love that. In between stimulus and response is the space. And it's in that space where true growth lives. It's the ability to choose our responses, regardless of what's happening in our lives. This is massive. We talk about this a lot of times with spouses, like it's easy to react, and you have a right to react, and you've got reason, and you've got actual things that have happened to your brain that make it easier to react, much like someone who struggles with addiction, right? Does that sound familiar? But we do have the ability to choose our responses. It has to be intentional, and it's not going to be easy. It will feel foreign, but it is crucial to developing strong relationships, not just with yourself, but with other people as well. It's absolutely huge. And if you ignore this, let's just say that you're like, okay, that sounds wonderful, but bullshit. I'm just going to keep doing me. I'm good. My relationships are fine. If you ignore this, here's what's going to happen. This is just some of my experience with it. You will misinterpret intentions. And we've always said, and this is, please understand the gray area here. Intentions are important. Okay. Ultimately, actions are what matters, because we can say, I didn't intend to do that, but you did, right? You will misinterpret people's intentions if you don't have context. And context comes from empathy. It comes from self-awareness. It comes from understanding emotional intelligence. You can avoid a lot of fights when you can look at someone's situation and understand why they did something. It gives context, right? You're less likely to have massive blow-ups. I think, especially when I think about like in the workplace, thinking like generally, like even when people have like lost us a lot of money, I'm like I can see why they did that. Is it okay? No. We still have to go correct that. But it wasn't malicious. It's like Hanlon's razor, right? Don't attribute to malice what you can just attribute to incompetence. Understanding people's emotional state oftentimes gives you answers that you don't have to go searching for or fight over to dig out of them. You can sort of suppose it yourself. You can just, you will be able to see, right? You're not going to have to go, why did they do that? Why did they do that? You're going to understand it. And this can be beneficial for you as you're looking for sort of closure or peace in your life from someone that has not, may never provide that for you. You can understand because you develop the emotional intelligence to understand why they do the things they do. I hope that you've discovered why you do the things that you do as well. That's what we're really here for, but you can understand other people's, and that's really important. It really is for a lot of people, for that closure they desperately seek, or for that understanding. I think one of the things that's the most frustrating in the world is when someone behaves in a way that you wouldn't, and like you just cannot understand, like, why would they do X? Well, it's because you never would. You would never do that. And so then you have to think, okay, let me put myself in the frame of mind of a person that would. And then you can start to say, okay, well, if I were to do that, then this would also have to be true. If I were to lie to someone, that would mean I must lack empathy. If I were to lack empathy, that must mean that I don't understand how my actions affect other people. That must mean I've never dealt with my own pain. Does that sound like the blueprint of someone that you want to be in a relationship with? No. Not at all. Not even close. And now you can see how far they really have to go. And you can ask yourself a simple question. Are they going to be willing to do that work? The answer is generally no. So this can help you. Like, I don't mean to diminish what you're going through or just like put the flame out on any hope that you have, but that's just the truth for a lot of people, is that this will help you gauge someone's intentions. It will help you read that in a way that is beneficial to you. You will also, if you ignore, right, you will react impulsively. And in doing that, you will damage trust. This is like, for me, reacting impulsively. My God, man. If there were like a bucket over here and I had to put a penny in it every time that I reacted impulsively, it would, like, the floor would be filled. It would look like Scrooge McDuck's vault in here, just full of coins. I wouldn't know. Millions of times in my life, probably, I've reacted impulsively because my feelings were more prevalent. They were so big in the moment that I couldn't stop them. I couldn't control it. I was going to respond. I was going to react rather than respond. And it really screwed with my relationships. And not just because trust was damaged, but because safety was damaged. When I react in anger or I react in outburst, that signals I am not safe to other people around you, including your children. They will start to feel hypervigilant. They will feel anxious. They will not come to you and feel comforted. And if I know anything about men that I've come to know, men that truly want to be better men, is that they want other people to feel safe with them. That is, as a natural protector, that's what you want, right? You're effing it up right now if you're not doing this. They're never going to feel safe with you when they see you act that way. I don't know why this guy keeps coming up, but Dax Shepard, I was listening to a podcast like about a year ago, and he was telling the story when he was sober, and there was like some dude on the side of the road, and he threw like a cup at his windshield that like busted over the windshield. And he got out of the car, and I think he beat the shit out of the guy. And his wife, Kristen Bell, was in the vehicle, and he got back in the car, and he was doing this because he feels like he's protecting someone. Like, he's letting them know, like, I got your back. I won't let anyone come after you. But she said it had the exact opposite effect. And he said when she told him that, like, he looked in her face and she was scared of him. She didn't feel safe at all, not even close. And he said in that moment, he was crushed, and he was like, oh shit, now I get it. Now I understand. Oh, and it's something that he really had to address and work on, and I think it's crucial, man. I want people to feel safe with me. More than anything in the world, I want people to feel safe with me. Like, when my son or daughter or my wife can come, like, cuddle up next to me and talk to me or just lay their head on me, and it's not performative, it's just because they feel safe with me. That's the greatest compliment you could ever have as a husband or a parent or a friend. That's what we really want. And that comes from having emotional intelligence. If you don't do it, you will not get that. You will be lonely, and you'll wonder why. You'll wonder why no one trusts you, why you're such a good person, but no one comes around. It's because you've never really taken accountability for the way that you react and you don't respond. If you will also fail to see your own blind spots, which I think is an oxymoron. It might be. You won't know where you have work to do, if that makes sense. Being self-aware is a blessing and a curse. Because once you have self-awareness, you are always going to look for your part in things, and you will rarely ever put blame on other people because you're always going to be introspective. I did this like obsessively for probably a decade in my recovery, always looking at my part in things. And I still believe this, that even if I have a 1% part in a problem, I've got a part. If someone else is 99% responsible, I've still got a 1% part that I'm responsible for. But I treat my 1% like 99% when I shouldn't. And that was the gray area I kind of had to walk out of and figure out. That's where boundaries really became important for me, and big picture and seeing everything as it was. But I wouldn't take it back though, because in doing that, I learned how to identify my own blind spots, places where I was lacking that I wasn't really realizing it. And that came from feedback from the world and listening to other people and hearing how, like, I listened to feedback and their critiques of me, and I want to hear that stuff. And then I would have to do it for myself as well and ask myself some really simple questions every night before I go to bed. Was I resentful today? Was I angry? Was I afraid? Did I keep something from someone? I would ask myself these questions. And in almost 13 years, I've never had a night where the answer to every single one of those questions was no. There's always a yes in there somewhere. And so, okay, let's say I was fearful today. What was I scared of? Well, I was scared to I was scared to publish an episode. I was scared to bring something up. I was scared to say something I wanted to say. Well, okay, so why do you feel that way? Well, I feel that way because I'm afraid that someone's going to misinterpret the way that I've said something. Okay, well, why would that be a problem? Well, and if I have to be more clear about my communication, that means I'm gonna have to sit down and like rehearse in front of a camera and work on it. Okay, so what is it really about? It's about me not wanting to put in the effort of preparation. And I wouldn't get to the bottom of that kind of stuff if not for doing stuff like that. And this can be in your relationships too. Let's say you're scared of commitment. Well, where does that come from? I was scared of commitment. Well, why? Why are you scared to go all in? Well, because you feel like there's better options. Okay, so why would that matter? Oh, because I feel like if there's better options, then I should take advantage of them. Okay, well, why would that be important? What's wrong with the situation you have? Well, because I'm selfish and I want what's best for me and I'm not really thinking about other people. We've gotten to the root of it pretty quickly, haven't we? If you're not going to develop emotional intelligence, you are going to forever be blinded by whatever drives you underneath everything. What's underneath those emotions, right? That's the risk that we run. Your career stalls, that's another issue. We talked about that, right? You're going to make less money. You're going to get promoted less. You're never going to be a C-suite person. You never be considered. You won't be part of the cool club. You're going to get overlooked. You're going to get overlooked, bottom line. And then, your relationships eventually are going to collapse under resentment and disconnection. Low emotional intelligence is a silent deal breaker for people. And this is why marriages fail. This is why teams implode. This is why talented people plateau, is because they do not develop emotional intelligence. This is oftentimes, I think, why a lot of relationships fail in sobriety. It's not just about the things that happened. It's about the inability to move forward through those things. It's about your inability to hear what's happened and to make sense of it all and to do something with it. That's what it's about. And that's what spouses, partners, that's what anyone's really wanting in a relationship. I would argue if you could be emotionally intelligent and present, no one would give a shit how much you drink or what you use. But I would also argue, I would challenge you to use drink the way you do and also have emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is the most important set of skills that you can develop as a person, as a human. Your relationship depends on it. Your ability to parent children depends on it. Your ability to be in a career or to start a business or be successful in any way hangs on this, and we have to develop it. Adam Grant he's just like a quote monster. I think he's a psychologist. He's been on podcasts and stuff like that, but I follow him on Threads. He said this, and I love it. He said, a mark of emotional intelligence is prioritizing your values over your moods. Immature people are victims of their feelings. Their choices are governed by fleeting sensations. Mature people take responsibility for their reactions. Their choices are guided by lasting principles. It's about values. And how many times have we sat here in front of this camera and these microphones and talked about the importance of your values and figuring out what your core values are? And at the end of the day, every decision you make must also come from those values. Every decision you make comes from those values. That's why they're so important. And that's really what maturity is. It's being able to say, what do my values say? What do my most deeply held beliefs say about the way that I respond here or the way I act here? And if you've never thought too hard about it, or if you've been rather inconsistent in executing on those values, you need to fix it. You need to spend some time with this and go through it. The people around you will thank you, but you will thank you at the end of the day. Truly, you will. You will be better for this. You will be able to lay your head on the pillow at night completely at peace with the person that you were today. And I would argue too, this makes it a lot easier for recovery and sobriety. Like, it's not necessarily going to fix your cravings, right? But it's going to fix a lot of the shame and a lot of the things that drive some of that stuff. Like once you're physically sober like anyone else and you've gotten through sobriety, and let's say you're like 6 months in or whatever it is, like this is the stuff that you're working on now. This is the stuff that really matters. This is where you need to be spending all of your time, every bit of it. I think recovery was a huge bait and switch for me. I wanted to stop drinking so I could become a better person. But what I found was that when I started to behave like a better person, I didn't have the need to drink anymore. And I can't even tell you why that is, but that's just the way it works. That was my experience with it. When I started living by my values, I stopped needing to put something in my body to feel okay with myself. when I really started to focus on that. I didn't have to think about not drinking. It was a byproduct, if you will. It was bait and switch. It was really cool the way that worked because I just wanted to learn how to manage my drinking. I just wanted to learn how to not drink, but I didn't want to change anything else. And I'm glad that I listened. I'm glad that I was convinced that it was really about changing my behaviors and my values and my ideas and my beliefs and the way I showed up. And as a result of doing that, I didn't have to put anything in my body anymore. And I think that's amazing. That's how I've stayed sober. That's how I've rebuilt relationships. And underneath it all, this is what people are really wanting. This is what girls want. Guys want to know what girls want. This is what girls want. They do. Other things matter. Yes, it matters. But this is really what anyone would want. When you're looking for safety in somebody, this is what they're after. When you're looking for someone to start a family with, this is what they're after. If you're looking for someone to hire to run a business, this is what they're after. These are the things they're after. Yeah, you do need to get to the gym, take care of yourself. You do need to have a somewhat decent job, right? We all need to support ourselves. Shit's expensive. But at the end of the day, these are the things that matter the most. This will make you feel appreciated. This will make you feel desired and wanted and all these things that I hear from guys on a regular basis that they're not feeling. Do this stuff. Do this stuff. And it's not that difficult. It's really not. Like, to me, it's become common sense, but I can also remember a time when it wasn't. But if you start to dive into it, you're going to discover all kinds of amazing things. Check out our website, twfo.com. We've got a reading list. There's a lot of books on there that kind of deal with this sort of thing. And you should check them out. You should read them. You should start to explore what this means to you and develop it. That's what I did. Right. It was practice over time. It was surrounding myself with people who were practicing this stuff. It was a lot of reading, a lot of podcasts, a lot of exploration. And over time, you get good at it. Like anything else in life, you practice it and you get really good at it. And then one day I hope that you can show someone else, like your kids. That would be huge. That would be amazing. So let's go through, let's do a challenge, man. Let's do a challenge this week. Let's do a name it, don't numb it challenge. We talked about affect reasoning. Once a day, stop and say, right now, I feel blank because blank. You have to answer that question. I feel blank because blank. And it cannot be surface level. This is a question, it's like recursive. You're going to have to keep asking the question to get to the answer. So right now, I feel anxious because you're going to say, because he's drinking again. But what is it really saying? What is it really saying, right? Is it because he's not listening when I tell him how much this hurts me? And that hurts me because when I was younger, someone did that to me and it put me in a place where I felt like I had to rely on others for my own safety. And then if I were to try to defeat that, I would have to create safety on my own. I would have to take responsibility for my environment. You see how far we can go with just a simple question like that? It's amazing. It really is. But this is how I started to develop like an understanding of my emotions rather than just saying like, how do I deal with the anxiety? What does that mean? Like, let's explore what that actually means. You can do this in therapy too. It's really cool, but you can do it in your car, just sitting there. Right now, I feel blank because blank. Or sometimes it is just that simple. Sometimes it's like, I feel scared because I have a presentation letter. And we all know like public speaking is one of the greatest fears that people can have. And you sitting in front of people, you're afraid you're going to make a mistake. Someone's going to challenge you, or you're going to slip up. Your voice is going to crack. You're going to fall on stage, whatever it is, right? In the end of the day, it's because a fear of judgment, right? And where does that come from? Run the tape, figure it out. It's really fun. It's kind of a fun game, actually. 90-second pause. That seems kind of long, but I think it's appropriate. When you're triggered, wait 90 seconds to respond. And I think really when it comes to emails and texts, this is huge. It's how a lot of you are communicating anyway. If you were face to face with somebody and you wanted to have a 90-second pause, that would be weird. We're talking about like emails and texts and things. There are so many emails in my drafts folder that have sat there because I got pissed and I was about to send a scathing email. And one of the best pieces of advice I ever got from this friend of mine, his name was Rich. He was an amazing man, and he passed away. I think he was 9 years sober when he passed away. Cancer, not alcohol related. Told me, just let the world spin, bro. Just let the world spin around a couple times before you reply to that. And I would do that. I would put the email and I would write the angry email and I would stick it in my drafts folder. So it was cathartic writing what I wanted to say. And then I would leave it there. And then I would come back to it after like a minute or two, or sometimes even longer than that. It'd be like a day, depending on how big the situation was. And I would read it and I would be like, oh, I'm so glad I didn't send that shit. Holy crap. Because by that time I was able to see the situation more clearly and respond in accordance with my values and who I'm really about, not just my anger. And that was huge, man. And then over time, like I started to respond accordingly, right? Rewired my brain to think about this and understand that even though I'm going to go there, that's not the right way to respond. So give it 90 seconds. Most emotional surges will fade if you can just give them a beat. If you can just pause for a moment, that will fade and you will respond in accordance with your values in a way that you can be proud of, in a way that is effective in communication as well. You won't have to apologize after the fact. Let's do also another challenge. Let's do an empathy check-in. Ask one person this week. This is for guys like me. What's the hardest part of this for you? Just ask them that and then reflect back on what you heard in one sentence. What's the hardest part of this for you? Let's say that I come home and Paige has been struggling with creating content, right? Whatever it might be. This is something we struggle with because we feel a lot of pressure to like bring something excellent every week. And I think that you can really drive yourself nuts when you put that kind of pressure on yourself. And I'll come home and say, what's going on? And she'll just talk to me. She'll say, you know, I've got writer's block. I want to say this, but I don't think that that's effective. And I feel like a dumbass, and I feel like I'm a shitty podcaster and a crappy writer or whatever it is. And I'll just reply back to what I heard from her and just letting her know that I heard her. It's like, I totally understand. The process of writing is so difficult. And, you know, the challenge of coming up with new stuff is really hard, and you feel all this pressure and you're more or less just repeating it. It's a reflection exercise. It's mirroring, you know, in psychological terms, it's called mirroring. Actually, hostage negotiators use this technique a lot. And it's a way to let the other person know that you heard them. And in that moment, they feel, oh, they understand me, right? It's validating for them. And then you can start to have a real conversation based on that. Usually, sometimes she doesn't want to talk about it. Sometimes she says, leave me the F alone. And that's cool too. That's fine. Because at least I know I'm safe, and she would. If she wanted to, she would have that combo with me. So pick one of those, practice it for the next week. I would love to hear back from you how it's going. You can reach out to the show, info@twfocouple.com, or you can reach out to us on social media. We generally, if it's something related to the show, you'll usually get either an acknowledgement of a response, like an emoji, or you'll get a response from us, especially when people respond to challenges. I love to respond to that kind of stuff. I appreciate reading that kind of stuff. I really do. I care if you guys are doing well. I care. I genuinely care. I think about you guys. I want you to do well. I want you to take some of the stuff that I've learned and make your own thing with it. Make it better, you know, like run with it. I love to see people win. I love nothing more than to see people around me winning. And so I hope that you guys can take this and do something with it. Hopefully you've learned something about emotional intelligence this week. Hopefully it's something that I hope that you've learned. For the guy like me, I hope more than anything that you recognize this as something that is going to be critical to your life moving forward. And it's really made you second guess your stance on it up until now. I really do. I hope that this has been an aha moment for you. And for the rest of you that already know about this stuff and you're like, I got that shit down, awesome. Maybe you've heard me put it in a way that simplified it in your mind so that you can communicate it even better to other people in your lives. So until next time, I am Matt, and thanks for joining me.